Hello, everyone, and welcome to Debating Metal. I'm your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, along with my co-host, Chris Kay. This is the podcast where we talk about all things hard rock and heavy metal, and this week we're talking about Rob Halford and his solo career bands Fight and Halford as we go head-to-head with War of Words versus Resurrection.
These are the debut albums of Rob's two solo bands, and we're going to go over each song, debate all their merits, and at the end we'll decide which album we like more. Last episode, we concluded our two-part series of heavy metal one-hit wonders, so if you missed it, make sure to download it and click subscribe so you don't miss any more.
So before we get into the main topic, Chris, I want to know what you've been listening to lately.
So I was pretty excited to hear just very recently. I don't know how long this news has been out there, but I think I found out last week was the Halo Effect is a new band that's formed kind of out of former members of In Flames, and it's from the era that I really enjoyed. So a lot of the members, including Peter Iwers, Jesper Stromblad, and Daniel Svensson, were members during the Clayman Colony era of the band. Most of them continued on for a few more albums, which I didn't like as much. But Nicholas England has been in the band recently, in the last 5, 6, maybe longer years. But he was also briefly in the band right around the time that Horacle was concluded. So he didn't actually play on that album, but he had joined the band. So he has a history with them. And then the singer, which is very exciting, is Michael Stan, which was the singer from Dark Tranquillity. He's still doing Dark Tranquillity, but he was on the very first In Flames album. So it's all members. I mean, Michael was or Mikhail, or I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name, but he was never technically an official member, but I think if you've been a long-term fan of In Flames, you kind of consider him one. So it's really cool to hear this project. They just released their new single, Shadow Minds, which it's not the most amazing track, but I really do like it, and it has a lot of shades and flavors from what Dark Tranquillity is currently doing and for their last few albums. And then also it does have like that old In Flames spice to it too. So I hope to hear more out of them, and I hope that like the next few tracks are even better. But like to me, this was still a pleasant surprise, and I'm really happy with it. So and I'm glad a lot of these guys, like most of them had semi-retired, and they're basically all coming out of retirement. And I am really, really curious about Nicholas England's status in Flames, because he's still technically a member of that band, even though he hasn't played with them for a while. Chris Broderick has been playing in his position, but he's still listed as a member of the band. He's still on the website. It's very odd. It's very curious that he hasn't been active just to do a project with all the people that were dissatisfied with In Flames. So it's kind of interesting.
I think there's some legal ramifications there.
Yeah, there's probably something that he's having to sit out a contract or something like that. I'm a little curious.
Yeah, I heard the song. Actually, I heard it the same time that you heard it the other day, and I thought it was pretty cool. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be a little faster, but it was a pleasant surprise. I mean, I could understand everything that was going on. It was kind of more heavy than it was fast. So I thought that was pretty cool.
100% agreed. And I've still been listening to Bloodbound. I really like the first 3 albums. I've been finding it really hard to get into this stuff after with their current singer. I kind of cycle through those first 3 albums and really enjoy them. And then other than that, I've been listening to Wasp. It's a band I seem to always go back to. So. Oh,
have you? Because, I've been reading up about them lately, and, quite honestly, Chris Holmes just annoys the shit out of me. The thing about Wasp, I love Wasp. I have loved Wasp since the beginning, and I have followed them throughout their career, And it's funny because one of the things about that band, they're very similar to, for me at least, very similar to Twisted Sister, where Twisted Sister is not is not the band that you name off as one of your favorite, top 10 bands, or something. It could be. Don't get me wrong, but it's one of these bands that I just continuously go back to. Oh, I want to hear this song. Let me hear this album. And Wasp is one of those. I love the first album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. The first Wasp album, and and I like Last Command, and I like Inside the Electric Circus. They got a lot of good songs, and over the years they've it's become more of the Blackie show. And then all of a sudden they became like Manowar, where Blackie never comes home to the United States. He basically does everything Wasp in Europe. They can't sell a single seat in an American place, but they can sell out clubs, I guess. And I don't even, I use the term loosely, clubs out in Europe. And the article I was just reading about with Chris Holmes was that he was griping about the fact that it became the Blackie show after the first album, when the drummer left, Tony Richards, and it had to be Blackie on the album cover by himself. And every so often, every few months or every few weeks, you get an article from Chris Holmes, and it's just talking about how he got screwed over by Blackie and how he hates Blackie and how he never wanted to be like this, and it's like, dude, quit whining. Mm-hmm. Really? It's just like, stop already. Like, what bugs me more about it is you could tell he's bitter, but at the same time, there's really something deep in there that almost kind of tugs at his heartstrings. He wants that friendship back. You can almost feel it. But he's continuously just talking about how much he can't stand him and how much, he hates him and he's never going to work with him again. Yet I personally believe if Blackie turned around and said, I'm sorry, Chris would be the first person there. And
I mean, it's possible. When you have that affiliation and you're part of something, like it's got to be hard. Like you are responsible for writing some of the songs or making them famous, but you really don't have any ability to do them. Anybody that contributed to the songs can go play them and stuff like that. But it's different when, like, say for instance, Sebastian Bach is doing the Slave to the Grind tour. For like, what is it, 30 years anniversary?
Yeah, 32nd.
Oh, well, yeah, technically, because it got delayed, right?
Right.
Actually,
this year is actually for Slave to the Grind. I'm sorry. This Slave to the Grind is the 30th because it came out in 91. When he was...
the first album.
Right, he got the Skid Row album got canceled twice, the tour. So it
yeah. So he's doing Slave to the Grind, and when you go see Sebastian do Slave to the Grind, it still feels in a lot of ways like seeing Skid Row do it. It's a little different because it's different musicians, but at the same time, like, that front man being there, that's a big factor.
Right.
But for some reason, when you see like the guitarist with another singer doing it, sometimes it doesn't have that same vibe. So he doesn't have the ability to just go out and do the same thing that Blackie does. Right.
I mean, yes. So there's that bitterness to it there as well, because he doesn't get a chance to perform his music. I get that. But the best thing for him to do would be to actually write a good song and go out there and tour, or go out there and do a couple shows and you could do, I mean, shit, Bobby Blotzer was performing as Rat, and he had people come to his shows, and, it was nobody from Rat other than him. And he's a drummer. And so that's even worse than Chris. At least Chris was a guitar player. He could play the solos,
I mean, he's just letting that anger and bitterness consume him, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, look, I get it. And he's tried to turn his life around. I get that. I believe he's clean. He's sober. But it's just a constant... It's very similar to, like, the whole thing with Ace Frehley and Kiss. Ace is constantly, let me take that back. The media, and the media being all the social media people who interview for Instagram or for websites, all those guys, because quote unquote media is not, the mainstream media is not chasing down Ace Frehley to get his latest, word on Paul and Gene, but it's the internet. It's the fans of metal and rock that are interested. So they continuously ask him, hey, so what do you feel about a reunion? And they're always asking about that. And so it's always on the tip of Ace's tongue. And that's not necessarily his fault. But at the same time, he could have put an end to it by saying, listen, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I want to talk about my new album. I want to talk about my solo album, anything. But move past the whole point of, when they ask me, maybe I'll come back, just, dude, get over it.
Which is not going to happen.
Which is not going to happen, It's like Peter Criss, the same thing. He's like, I'll never play with those guys again. No, because they don't want you to. You don't get it, So Chris needs to kind of just let it go, really. He's got to be like, Anna and Elsa. Just let it go. He's out there in that area, or so's Blackie. I believe they're both in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. They should just go hook up somewhere in Hungary and have a beer, something. Anyway, all right. Well, tonight's episode main topic is actually a suggestion from a listener. And someone that I've been corresponding back and forth with on Instagram. His name is Mark, or the account's name is Mark Christina. Mark Christina suggested that we do. He wanted us to do Halford's 2 solo albums head to head, which was Resurrection versus Crucible. But while I was having this conversation, it came to me. I said, "What if I put together head to head the first 2 albums of each of the solo bands, or the first album of each of the solo bands? So Fight, War of Words versus Resurrection from Halford, because I think those 2 albums are so strong and they're such good quality, where the second album from each of those bands kind of drops down, and they're not necessarily bad albums, but they're not as good as the first one. So I figured these two
they're
would
both sophomore slumps.
Yeah,
honestly.
Exactly. They're both sophomore slumps. So I want to do 2 really powerful debut albums. So we're doing War of Words from Fight versus Resurrection from Halford. All right, so let's see. What do my notes say here? All right. Fight, the War of Words album came out in 1993. Kind of a little bit of a history on band. Obviously, Rob Halford, many of you out there know Rob Halford left Judas Priest. He wanted to do he actually didn't want to leave. He wanted to just take some time off so he can get this kind of off his chest. The band wanted to continue doing new music, and so therefore, when Rob left, they just basically parted ways, or something to that effect. There's more details to that story, and there's more legal fights to that story. But
I mean, he wanted to leave, or he didn't want to leave. He wanted to go do his own project. They basically said, we can only sit around for so long, and that was it. Like they made him sign out of the band, basically, and whenever he was ready to come back, then he was going to be welcome back. This is according to Rob from his book. And then they found a new singer. So there was some, feeling of betrayal, etc. But the fact is, after that long of a period of time, I don't really blame Priest either. So
no, I mean you can't sit around and wait forever.
No, not absolutely.
Especially not. The band at that point, the band was aging. The band was going through a rough period with just the way the '90s were starting to pan out. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't blame them. They had to do what they had to do. It didn't seem like Rob was coming back. But oddly enough, Rob, when he left, took with him Scott Travis So that was an interesting thing. So he puts his band together, and he hires pretty much unknown people other than Scott. Brian Tilse, one of the guitar players, and Russ Parrish was the other guitar player. No one knew who Russ was at the time, so we all know him now as the guitar player for Steel Panther. What's his nickname in the band?
Satchel.
But that whole persona didn't exist at the time. So him and Brian put together a very formidable tag team of guitar playing. It was some really good shit on this album with those two guys. Then I believe JJ, the bass player, was Rob's tattoo artist, and that's how he got the gig, and then there was Scott. So this album, I'm going to put it hands down right here. I love this album. I love the production on this album. I love the drum work on this album. I love the guitar work on this album. Just the whole production about it. The drums sound great, and the guitars have this buzzsaw kind of sound to them. And even with all that going on, the bass still cuts through on the album. So to me, this album is really, really good. And don't get me wrong, because Resurrection, when we talk about that in a little bit, also has some very, very good production, but it's slightly different because it's almost in the tinge of the more modern style. After like 2000, which when that album came out, there was a certain kind of very computerized style of production, but we'll talk about that later. So as we go through these songs, I just wanted to reiterate one thing. All the guitar solos on this album are really good. There's some great guitar work, so I'm not going to mention, this song had a great guitar solo or this, that, and the other thing, unless you have something that you want to say specifically about it, because I just think the guitar work and the solo work on this album from front to back is just amazing. And last but not least, to talk about this album, you and I had a conversation about the kind of like the topic of this album and how Halford's Resurrection is more storytelling. This one is kind of very thematic. It's a lot about government, a lot about corruption, and a lot about, in a way, personal, but not the same kind of personal that Resurrection is. So, without any further ado, let's go into the songs. All right?
All right.
First song that starts off War of Words is the song Into the Pit. For me, that's just an amazing way to start an album. It's just a relentless assault. The vocal style is very, very similar to Painkiller, where it's just the high-pitched falsetto scream. I love it. You hear the anger. You kind of know, after, while you're listening to the song, this album is going to be potent. It has got a lot going on in this song. There's some anger in this, but when you start listening to the lyrics, it's not what you think it is when you hear Into the Pit. Some people might think immediately, oh, it's a song about a mosh pit or something like that. It's not like that at all. It's more metaphoric. And so that you got to really listen to the lyrics, and it's more about, again, government and corruption, and it's kind of interesting. But song-wise, it's killer riff. The drum work on this is outstanding. The drum work on this whole album is outstanding, but I really like this particular song. A lot of the rhythms that Scott plays on this, I tap along with my fingers all the time without even thinking about it. What do you think of that song?
You kind of said everything, like everything possible.
Sorry.
So yeah, it's like it's really ripping. Like it's a sonic assault from the beginning, and like you said, the drums hit and they hit hard. Like Halford is just belting in his high register, and yeah, it's really kick ass. Yeah, it's not necessarily specifically about a pit, but it carries over in that way. You want to get in the mosh pit and just rock along with the song.
Oh yeah, when you hear the song, you want to jump in that pit.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, even though you said you don't want to talk about the solos, I do, because
that's fine. I'm just saying collectively for me, all the solos are on here are amazing, and I just don't want to sound repetitive.
Gotcha. So Yeah, this song, or this solo in particular, though, it just really kicks ass. Like it's one of those that you think it's just really shreddy, but there's a lot of dimension to it, which is what I really like about the solos on this album. It's not just shreddy. It's not just like the same thing over and over. There is a lot of variation throughout here, and each solo fits the track really well. And that's different than what I feel about a lot of albums where it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to come up with a lot of solos and, insert them here. Like, there are a lot of musicians that really put a lot of thought into how it fits into the song, and then there's a lot of musicians that don't. And so, like, this time, I think, like, these guys really just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. I mean, to concur with what you're saying, I think with the guitar solo work and just with all the work on this album, there's a lot of attention to detail for this, and that's what I like about it. Like, for instance, if this is a debut album from any other band, I think it's kind of weird. Even though Rob Halford brings name recognition to this, I think if this is a debut album from any other band, it blows the market away, and there's just this tremendous amount of interest. But for whatever reason, I don't know if there was a pushback against Rob to some degree from some of the fans or whatever, but the band never really took off per se. I mean, they did an MTV appearance, they played clubs, and they played clubs relentlessly, but for whatever reason, and maybe it's because when the sophomore slump on the second album, but it was just one of these things where like I almost felt like they could have been doing theaters right away as opposed to just clubs, but for whatever reason it didn't translate that way.
Sometimes people have a hard time grasping, like, this guy went to this or went somewhere else and is doing something different, but I'm loyal to the real band, or like there's this really messed up mentality sometimes that the fandom has, where I think it was one of those things, like, people just didn't know that he was doing this project because there wasn't as good of advertising, and then two, like, there are the people that are just diehards and they don't want to listen to anything else but the original. And so it's sometimes unfortunate that it's a matter of luck.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, if it's someone else that they put a bajillion dollars into, then I think it goes somewhere. But anyway, let's get on to the next song. The second song on the album is called Nailed to the Gun. And to me, that's like a perfect segue from Into the Pit into Nailed to the Gun. Because first of all, the way the production or the way that they put it onto the record, there's not much time in between the two tracks. It's like 1 second.
No, it goes right into the next track.
Exactly, and again, it goes into some more killer drum beats from Scott, and then all of a sudden the melodies hit, and the riffs on this song is awesome. The melodies on the verse is awesome. So, there's a lot to this song. And then, Rob goes into his traditional vocal style, and you can hear who he is again. And it's a cool song. I mean, I really like this song a lot as well.
Yeah. I mean, you can already tell, like, the song structure is a little simpler, but that's than what they were doing with Judas Priest, but honestly, that's an aspect of it being more aggressive. This is more groovy. This is more like heavy than Judas Priest, and like it's hard to say because like Painkiller is very obviously heavy, but it also is very melodic, and it's not as deep and dark and heavy as this.
Right.
So, like, I really like about this song is the twin vocals. So Rob is singing, but there's also the growl behind him, especially on the title lyrics, the Nailed to the Gun. So it's really got a cool sound. And then again, the solo has a lot of variety to it. Like, it takes you kind of on a journey throughout. And so again, this is a highlight of what they do here on this album in particular, is that the solos don't just have one dimension to them. There is so much beyond that, and like the play between both guys is what's so good. Is that it's not just one voice coming out; it's both of their sounds, and they're playing off of each other so well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Brian and Russ do a really fabulous job of intermingling with each other in the guitar work, and you would think that they had been playing together for ages, almost like KK and Glenn. But I mean, from what I gather, back in the day, they had basically just met in the band. So so that's still pretty good. I mean, they played really well. The next song is "Life in Black." This song's a little different. It's a plotting song. It's slower. But I think what carries the song is because it is a plotting song. It's heavy, and the song is about a person who has wronged the protagonist, almost like a bad father-son relationship kind of thing, but it goes beyond the story because the song itself is so heavy, and it's not your traditional slow song. It's not like a ballad, but it's sort of like a sad but true kind of slow and heavy, Yeah. And I'm not trying to compare the two songs, but it's kind of like that. So this one plods along, but because of the way it's recorded, there's not a lot of overlap in the instruments. So there's a lot of space. Like I've always talked about, the song breathes really well, and I think that's what makes this song better than it really is.
Yeah, there's a lot of what was going on in Rob's mind in this album, and what I mean by that is, especially if you've read his book or listened to the audiobook, which I really suggest because he reads it. He, at this point in his life, he was, not out of the closet yet. I mean, he was within a certain group of his life, but for the most part, like, fans really didn't know. Some did. It's kind of interesting. Like, you definitely got to listen to it to really understand exactly what I'm saying. But he always had this fear that, like, everything was going to explode at some point. And I think he was just building up more and more anger and just a need to get that out of him that it really shows in this album. And I think that's an interesting comparison to what we'll get to with the next album too, because he's also at a different stage in his life, 7 years later. But yeah, in particular with this track, it's got that anger, but it's also very like sludgy, kind of like you said, plodding. The bass, I feel like the bass takes kind of a backseat on this track, where I feel like it should be pushed even further. Because like you're right, through most of it, it's very prevalent, but for some reason on a couple of the tracks, I don't feel like it's strong enough, and this is one of them. But the best part of this track to me is how the solo builds into the high range vocals. Like it meshes like all in one go, and that I thought that was a really cool effect.
Yeah, I like that. I like that part about it too. Okay, next one. Fourth song on the album, Immortal Sin. I really, really like this song. It's got some really killer melodies. It's got, again, some more killer drum work. I really, really like the sing-along chorus on this song. Again, mid-tempo, not as plodding as Life in Black, but it's heavy. It's a heavy as shit song. I mean, this song, this is one of my favorite tracks on this album.
Yeah, it's one of the heavier riffs on the whole thing. It just has that feeling like some tracks just make you want to like stomp through a mosh pit, and this is one of them. The chorus kind of sticks up somewhat as odd to me, because instead of like throughout the album he does this kind of almost like spoken style vocals, sometimes almost like kind of machine gun sounding.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, he's really kind of singing, and it's a little different than some of the other tracks. It's not a bad thing, but it's just kind of odd after like the first 3 tracks. This is a little bit more like what he did in Judas Priest, especially earlier Judas Priest. But not the sound of the track, but like his vocals.
Yeah, that happens a couple times on this album, and we'll point it out again later.
Yep, and so that's kind of it's a good track, but it's like it takes a minute to sink in, I think.
Okay, I hear you. All right, that brings us to War of Words, the title track, and to me, this is the song for me this is the best song on the album for me. And I really enjoy this album a lot. Like, I love Into the Pit. I love Nailed to the Gun. But War of Words, there's something about it that I really, really, really enjoy. The song begins with a reading of the First Amendment from the Constitution, which is so funny because this song is so appropriate to today's times. It's so relevant to what's going on in the U.S. today. Rob uses a falsetto scream again on this song, but it's not like fast like it was on Into the Pit, but it's grooving with the song, but he's at that high pitch. So it's really cool in that regards. I just love the chorus on this song. I love the riffs on this song, the drum work on this song. I mean, I love this song front to back. And then Rob, in the middle of it, he repeats the First Amendment. And for those people who don't know, Rob lives in Phoenix, Arizona, and he's an American citizen. He really, really believes in the American way of life. So he's been in Phoenix, and that's where he started the band, Fight. So he's been in Phoenix for years. I mean, probably from the early 80s, he's been living in Phoenix. It's one of those things where he has truly adopted America as his home country, and he really feels strongly about something like this, and that it showed up. I mean, there's a whole album that talks about government and stuff like that, or not the whole thing, but a lot of the songs on here. And so there's something that's just picking away at him, and he got it off his chest besides the personal stuff that was going on in his life at the same time too. So I really like the song. What is your thoughts on it?
I mean, it's not one of my favorites, but I do like it. I think for me, I like the faster paced tracks like Into the Gun, Nailed to the Gun or Into the Pit. But I do like it. I mean, the subject matter is what really highlights it for me. Like you said, Rob starts off with the really high-pitched vocals, which work. But there's part of me that wishes they did that same thing with the dual vocals, where it had like the growl in it too. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like there's just something missing. But it's again not a bad thing. So, like, that's the only thing that kind of leaves me confused is I always feel like there's just one layer that, like, should be there. And then the only other thing that I have to knock about this track is that the solo is just kind of there. It's not even a solo. It's like, it's just some, like, machinery type sounds and feedback. Mm-hmm. And it works with the track, but it's like, you have all these like really kick-ass solos, and then this one just kind of there. Yeah.
I mean, and that was almost kind of like almost like a preview to some degree of what would be coming in the 90s for metal with the lack of solos. So it's kind of it's kind of weird that way. I get what you're saying about it, but that there's a lot of for this track to me. There's a lot of atmospheric elements to it because of that solo, but it's not like one of those things where it's like very heady or anything like that. It's kind of weird to put into words, especially when we're talking about the war of words. All right, next song is Laid to Rest, another one of those heavy plotting songs. The slowness of the song makes it heavier. It's a really cool riff on this song. And again, I think there's a little bit of that atmosphericness to it.
It's kind of dreamlike.
Yes, it's very dreamlike, and it's got a lot of space to breathe on this song. And that's part of what makes it attractive, the song. But it's not, to me, it's not one of the best songs on the album or anything like that. But it is a good song. But to me, it's not one of the strongest ones.
It's pretty cool, but it's not like really memorable. I do like what he does with the kind of ambient kind of sounding vocals. It's kind of hard to explain, but he has like a ghostly sound almost in part of the song. But yeah, to me, it's a track 6 on an album.
All right, now track 7. Track 7 is For All Eternity. This is the album ballad. For those of you who are interested. Very similar in vein to me to Out in the Cold from Turbo, but not as good.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
There's a little bit somewhere in the rhythm of the riff that's kind of has a tinge of Out in the Cold, but like I said, it's not as good as Out in the Cold is.
Yeah.
The ballad itself is, not that great. It's a story, and it's just a ballad on a song on an album. Quite honestly, that I don't think needed a ballad on it. So
yeah,
because Rob's not going to be doing the Poison ballads, so I think it's unnecessary.
Oh God, can you imagine him doing like Every Rose Has Its Thorn? Oh God.
That'd be pretty funny.
I'm sure he could pull it off, but it just, I don't know. So, to me, the placement of the track is a little odd. Because it's right after Laid to Rest, which is already kind of a slower track, so you're like putting them back to back. And because you want that like ebb and flow, but this is like it's flowing too long. So here's really the thing about this track and why it's just really worth listening to, even though it's kind of mediocre. Like the second half of the song picks up and it's a lot better, but Rob's voice sounds amazing on this track because he doesn't do any kind of styling. He doesn't pinch or alter his voice in any way through parts of the song, and you just get his natural tone, and you almost forget that his voice can be like so like beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things, like you don't get a lot of tracks with that sound, and so it's really worth listening to. And then also, this might be the best solo on the album.
That I was going to mention about that now that I think about it, because I forgot to write that note down. But yeah, the solo is pretty cool on this song.
Yeah, like Into the Pit has a really good solo, and then I don't know if there's a better solo. Like this really might be the best solo on the album.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Rob hit like some high notes towards the end of the song? And so the show of range on this is in that regards, in how you talk about how beautiful his voice is, brings me back to thinking about Victim of Changes from Judas Priest. And the breakdown part in the middle. I love that part because Rob's just singing as smooth as can be. I mean, mind you, his voice was smooth back then at that time, but it was such a beautiful part in the middle of that song. And then to rip it with the high pitch, it was I love Victim of Change. It's one of my favorite Priest songs. But yeah, I get what you're saying with this one. I forgot about that part.
It's worth listening to. It's again not the best track on the album, but it has these parts of it that make you go, this is awesome. So
yeah, I think not the best track, but probably one of the best performances on the album.
Agreed. There you go.
So that's a good way of putting it. So it's definitely a must listen to, at least. All right, so that brings us to Little Crazy, and this song is cool. I like this song for a lot of different reasons. The intro is pretty neat because when he comes in as this that kind of like little bendy guitar notes.
It's like almost like a steel guitar, the way it sounds.
Right, so he's bending the notes, right, and he's like, "It's all right." I mean, you get this sense of a nutbag singing the song. That you sense Rob is a little off singing the song. He's a little crazy. I think he kind of what do they call that? That method acted in the song, which I think is pretty cool about it. The vocal melody on this song is awesome. The drum work on this song is awesome. I love the catchy sing-along chorus. I mean, people just love singing along. Whereas when I saw them in concert, I mean, this was one of the highlights. The whole start-stop rhythm about this song is what really emphasizes this song, because there's so much breathing room in this song.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's only one thing that I wish was different about it, and it is a really cool track, but there is an aspect of they have that bendy kind of steel guitar sounding bit at the beginning and at the midpoint, and I really wish that basically you had somebody playing along through the song in that style, because it would be such a killer second voice to Rob to have that kind of carried through. Because in my head, I could hear it. I could hear somebody like walking along doing that in the song, and that's the only thing that I always find a little disappointing. But other than that, I think this is like probably a really cool concert track.
Yeah, it was, when I heard them, I mean, I saw Fight twice, I believe, and both times they played it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely a fan favorite, so that's pretty cool. All right, so that brings us to Contortion, song number 9 on the album. This is where okay, so put it this way. For me, Contortion, Kill It, the next song, and Vicious, they're a trio of songs that almost kind of have to play together, because to me, not that one song has anything to do with the next, but they're all so almost like violent to me. I love these 3 songs. There's a lot of anger in these songs. Contortion is funny. It's one of those songs. It's weird that it's named Contortion, because it makes you just want to get a growly face on and just sing with as much guttural presence as you possibly could. This has got a killer riff. I love the gang vocals on this album. I love the gang vocals on this song. This song is heavy as fuck. I mean, that's all I can really say about it. It is just heavy as fuck.
Yeah, I consider it to be like, I keep saying, like a mosh pit track, and that's really what it feels like. Like that, the gang vocals on the word Contortion are, it's very like fist pumping,
Yes.
So it is kind of weird, but like I dig it. Like it's fun. And what I do really like is it has this kind of dissonant harmony with the guitars that I like.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. No, this song, like I said, in the next 3 songs, this one and the next 2 are just so angry and violent to a degree. It makes you get some aggression out, which is cool. When you need it to. You don't want to be listening to this during a bank robbery or anything like that.
Why not?
Well, because you're going to get in trouble. So anyway.
Oh, that's what's going to get you in trouble.
It's going to help or hurt.
You would have gotten away with it had you not been listening to
Contortion.
Contortion. Yeah.
Or Kill It. The next song is Kill It. Killer riff. I love the opening riff, and they got some killer gang vocals on this song. I don't know. I love this song. I love these 3 songs together. Every time I listen to these, I have to listen to these 3 songs. It's like a little group. It's like a mini EP that I got to listen to at the end of the album. I like this song.
Yeah, I mean, these, like you mentioned that the bass, was really prevalent on the album. I think these 3 tracks really are the most prevalent. Because it is true. Like, this is almost like a little trio of songs. And for some reason, I feel like on these 3 tracks in particular, they got the mix just right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is a really fun and heavy track. It's the way that I would describe it is it's the unholy offspring of Pantera and Red Hot Chili Peppers.
That's interesting.
The way that Rob almost speaks the vocals in this rhythmic pattern, it's very similar to what Anthony Kiedis does with Red Hot Chili Peppers in a way.
You're right. Yeah, I can see that.
But it has that Pantera sludginess to it, and it's a really cool combo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no other song that I can think of that sounds like this.
No, this is a unique song, but I gotta say something. The next song is even more unique to me. Vicious, to me, first of all, it was one of my all-time favorite drum tracks on a song. I just the whole intro of the song with the drums and all that stuff. I tap this rhythm all the time. I'm always tapping it on my desk or on a table or something. This rhythm always comes up. It's got a killer riff. Now, what's really cool about this song is the dichotomy between the gentle vocals that Rob sings and the literal vicious chorus that is on this song. The contrast between those two is what makes this song so amazing to me. You know, besides the production work, besides the great songwriting, just to be able to put such gentle vocals and then have a song so brutal as this, that's incredible songwriting.
Yeah, no, it's it has like this very 90s sound to it, and it almost has like a grunge aspect, which is kind of interesting because they did experiment with a lot of sounds, a lot of different things, but it has like this. The vocal sound has a little bit of a grunge kick to it, and that's I guess probably the best I can say. I do really like the track, but I honestly, of the 3, I think "Kill It's" my favorite though.
Okay, I can see that. The other thing about this, what I think is pretty cool with the catchy chorus, it has this. To me, it's like an earworm. Because of the vulgarity that it uses. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like, vicious, motherfucker. You keep saying that in your head. It's sort of like how there's that part in Creeping Death from Metallica towards the end, when they right before. So they do the part where they're telling everybody die, die, die. And right before they get to the part where he starts singing the main chorus part of that part. Jason, when they used to do it live, he was like, motherfucker, die, and then then James would come in kicking his vocals. That's the same kind of intensity. So when he's like talking vicious, and the bass player JJ is just yelling motherfucker. It's but then he's got these nice little gentle vocals, and it's so weird to me.
Yeah, but there's a lot of attitude in the track.
That's why I love this song so much. But I can see where you're coming from when you're talking about the hints of grunge to it. And that the other thing along with all of that is that even though you say there's a lot of experimentation on this album, what I like about it is that from beginning to end, it does still seem relatively cohesive.
Oh yeah. But it's cohesive where it needs to be, but it's experiments where it needs to as well.
Right.
And that obviously is something that Rob needed to do. So I think it's a well done amount of exploration while still keeping sight of what the project was.
Right, exactly. So the project being the last song, needing to finish the album, is a song called Reality, A New Beginning. Cool riff to start the song. It's got a very catchy verse melody to it. It's got a very unique and catchy chorus. So the rhythm section to me is what really makes this song heavier than what it really is. So between JJ and Scott, just banging away at their instruments, it makes the song a little bit heavier because it's not really that heavy of a song when you break it down. But the song is just a regular 4-minute song. But when you look at the track says it's like 13 or 12 minutes or something like that. There's a bonus track at the end of the song. It's, right at the 9:44 mark. The song called Jesus Saves starts. And that's a completely different kind of out of left field track. I don't want to say there's no production to it. I think they purposely stripped it down and put they put the tone button on your stereo. They took the bass off and they put it all the way up to the high end, and they stripped it of any bass whatsoever. And I just think it's purpose. It's almost like listening to it on a transistor radio.
Almost like listening to Metallica and Justice for All.
Well, that was
a joke about the bass. I'm sorry.
It's funny but there's a lot of bass drums on Justice. Just
I know.
Guitar.
It was a joke.
Don't joke about that. Stop it. Anyway, so tell me what you think about the song itself, Reality, A New Beginning.
So Rob does something different with his vocals throughout this album because this is not a Priest album, but there are times where it sounds like he's doing more of his Priest-style vocals, whereas other times he does kind of the same kind of thing he was doing with Vicious. It's not one of my favorite tracks on the album. It's an ending, it kind of ties in to everything, but at the same time, by this point I've heard the best, and now we're just kind of like, working our way out of the album.
Right. I agree with that. But that's where the whole Jesus Saves and bonus track thing is kind of weird, because you really, at this point, you've gotten to the end of the album. You're kind of like, all right, the album's over.
And I wasn't a fan of that thing. Like, people did this in the 90s and like early 2000s where there was like a hidden track, and I just most of the time didn't give a crap about them.
I think that started with Nirvana and the Nevermind album. Like,
it might have, yeah.
That was kind of the big thing.
I mean, Tool did it, and God, who knows else? I don't know.
But Jesus Saves is not a bad song. It's just a really like out of left field kind of song, that they threw in there. So that rounds out the album. I think it's a pretty cool album. Like I said, I said a lot about it in the beginning. It's the production work on this is amazing. The performances from all 5 musicians is just top notch. So I really, really enjoy this album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. So you though are going to lead the way for Halford and the Resurrection album. So before you start that though, I want to just mention who the 5 players are on the Halford band, because it's a completely different band, which is weird. Like I almost kind of didn't understand why he decided to just chuck the whole band and come back. But at the same time, he did have that experimental 2 thing in the middle. And so anyway,
yeah, I mean, he did something completely different.
That was off the wall.
Yeah, I mean, were the musicians available for Halford? I mean, not necessarily. And then also, this was a different project.
Oh yeah,
Fight.
I mean, Scott was already back in Priest at this point. So anyway, and Russ had already left for the second album for Fight. So anyway, Patrick Lachman played guitars. For those of you who know Patrick, he was the vocalist, right, for
Damage Plan.
For Damage Plan. So then there was Mike, or it's Metal Mike Class. I don't even know how to say his last name. It's like Chaziak or something like that, or Klasiak.
I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Neither am I. And then there was Ray Raindo, who played bass, and then Bobby Drazombek, who plays drums. And who's Bobby playing with now? It's not a metal band.
That I don't
Or
know.
is it?
Give
Or
me
is
a
he?
second.
Oh no! I think he's playing for Fate's Warning. That's who he plays with. So it is a metal band. I think he's playing with Fate's Warning. But anyway, this is the band to have the hardest last names to pronounce. So we're gonna move on from there. Let it go ahead and talk about Resurrection.
And you didn't mention Roy Z, did you?
I did not mention Roy Z as the producer. No, I did not.
Because didn't he do some of the work on the album as well?
I don't think so. I think he was just.
I want to say he did additional guitars on the album.
The additional guitars. There's always the additional guitars. Yes, Roy Z did do some additional guitar work. Pete Parada played drums on the song "The One You Love to Hate," and Ed Roth played keyboards on "Twist and Silent Screams," and it was produced by Roy Z. And by the way, "Fight" was produced by Rob Halford and a guy named Addy Baugh. So that's there you have that.
All right, so Resurrection starts things off. I mean, you got to remember this is also 7 years different than Fight. So in Fight, he is, coming right out of doing Judas Priest. He's at a stage in his life where he's, kind of uncomfortable with things that are going on because he is a gay man in a, in a metal community and doesn't know if he's going to be accepted. And at the time probably wouldn't have been on a large scale. And he's living in a world where he's not allowed to be himself. So he does a project where he can kind of, express himself fully without other voices being involved to the same degree as, say, Judas Priest, where you have very strong personalities that are writing the music. This was his chance to do something. It didn't work out. And then he moved on to doing something even more different with 2. And then this is his return to his metal god sound, because at this point in his life, he wanted to be back in Priest. And he talks about that in detail, but he couldn't be. It's almost akin to like Mike Portnoy now, where he wants to be back in Dream Theater, but he doesn't have a spot. So I think there's probably some kinship there in that regard, where he needed to do something, and this is not unlike what KK is doing now. So that's an interesting point there too.
That is true, but at least Rob didn't call it like Rob's Priest.
No, but I don't care about the name whatsoever. I just care about what the music he's putting out is. And so, like, yeah, KK's Priest isn't the best name, but I enjoyed the album a lot.
Yeah, it's a good album.
And it again, it's a similar concept. It's him being able to put out music in the same kind of vein, but not in the band. So the album starts off with Resurrection, and it is a killer track and so meaningful. He basically recaps his history from his personal life to Judas Priest to Fight to 2 to this point. At this point, he doesn't have the current history of rejoining Judas Priest. This is his feelings, his anger, his desire, everything comprehensive in one metal track. And it is truly a resurrection of the metal god. And at this point, hearing this in 2000, this was awesome.
Dude, seeing that when I walked into the record store and I saw this CD, I was like, oh yes, he is back. I didn't even hear it. And I just saw the cover.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's him on a motorcycle.
On the motorcycle with the jacket. I'm like, oh, my man is back. I thought that was so cool. This song, yes, the tale of Rob and his return to his metal roots. I love this song. This song is awesome. Painkiller style vocals with the falsetto screaming. Killer riff. It's catchy. The melody's catchy. The chorus is catchy. The guitar solos are ripping. I mean, this song is the bomb. Very similar in vein. You compared the 2 albums, Fight and Halford. You got Into the Pit and you got Resurrection. They both have the falsetto vocals. They both are coming out with ripping guitar work. Into the Pit, a little bit quicker. but this song is just killer. The story behind it is awesome as well. I love this song.
But still two very different tracks while having same kind of aspects to them.
Yes, exactly.
Which is so this is like more traditional older metal in a way while being really heavy. So it's like this feels a lot of ways like a logical step from Painkiller.
Something I just thought of when you mentioned the comparison, and I started thinking about it. Even though it's not recorded in the same way, War of Words from Fight, there's almost kind of like an industrial tinge to it. Mm-hmm. And I kind of think that's kind of what I like about that a lot, as far as that, because there's nothing in it that is like typical industrial, where it's just kind of computer generated, repetitive.
So you're saying
tracks.
It's not like two.
It's not like two at all. It's not like Nine Inch Nails. It's not like Ministry, but there's still a hint, like a whiff in the air of industrial metal. Yeah. So, but anyway, back to Resurrection.
So the next track is the next track is Made in Hell. To me, like, this is another banger. It is much in the vein of what Halford would do in his solo career going forward. So if you like this track, like, definitely listen to Halford 4 because it has a lot of the same elements. So what's interesting is, like, all of his solo albums have a unique sound. They don't sound consistently the same. He even has one of them as a Christmas album. But there are elements that are tied together, and this one sounds a lot, this particular track sounds a lot like what he would do in Halford 4. And it's a little cheesy, like the lyrics are cheesy, but in a good way, like in a Iron Maiden cheesy kind of way. Like, I really dig this track.
I like the song a lot too. And this is another autobiographical song. So there's two songs in a row that just basically tell the story of Rob Halford. And again, comparing it to War of Words, this is another song that kind of slows it down from the intro, the beginning song, and Rob goes back to his normal vocals. Again, the two songs have no comparison to each other. It's just the style from one, ripping falsetto vocals into your normal vocals, and the slower song, more understandable kind of song. So I really dig this song a lot. It's to me what we've all grown to know and love about Rob and his songwriting style.
Oh, for sure.
There's a cheesy element to it, but that's what Priest and Maiden are known for. Even Maiden's a little more cheesy, even though they're more serious. It's kind of weird. They do a lot more serious songs, but there's a cheesy element to it at the same time.
So the third track is Locked and Loaded, and this slows things down a little bit. It's a plotter. It's a head bobber, like, if you know, there's certain songs that just make your head bob, and it's probably a really good live track. It's not like, it doesn't do a whole lot for me, except for, honestly, it does have one of the best solos on the album. One thing to note here, as a whole, this album does not have the solos that War of Words has. The guitar work in general, like the riffs, are really good, but the solos are just not here. But in the context of the album, Locked and Loaded, it fits fine. It's where it should be, like, logically, in the grand scheme of an album. But yeah, I think it's kind of a down step from Made in Hell.
I think it's a really good song myself. I like the song a lot. What this song does remind me of, it reminds me a lot of Judas Priest. This is a very Judas Priesty kind of song.
Yeah, more so than the first two tracks.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I like the riff in the chorus a lot. I like it. I think it's an awesome song. Is it the best song on the album? No, but I think it's a pretty good song.
Yeah, I can definitely see Judas Priest doing this track. Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah. So the next one is Nightfall. It's slower, pretty heavy though, and it has some really interesting guitar riffs. So the thing is, it's not a very complicated song, but it has these little moments of kind of intricate guitar work. And I think that's kind of like the highlight of it. And I really like the chorus in its simplicity. It's not complicated whatsoever, but it's one of those that allows Rob's vocals to just kind of like breathe, as you put it.
Mm-hmm.
And the solos, not bad. Like in the grand scheme of like the album, like I mentioned, the solos are kind of weak as a whole. Like this one's not bad.
What I like about this song is got a very melodic riff, and it's got a very catchy chorus. Very melodic chorus. So, I mean, it's again, we're talking about Rob Halford and him wanting to be back in Priest. You can sense it. Locked and Loaded had a lot of that, and this song has a lot of Latter Day Priest before he left kind of style to it. So, and he's singing more in that priesty vein than he had in any of his previous work. And so you could tell, you're sensing this. Yes, it's a Halford solo band, but you're sensing there's a lot more to it. And it's almost like a resume tape. Can I be the singer of your band? And this is the tape that he gives him. Look, I can sing pretty good. And there's some really good stuff on it. Nightfall is pretty good. It's a lot of range to it.
Yeah. Definitely. So the next track is Silent Screams. This is a fairly typical, like slower, like what you would consider a Priest ballad, because Priest doesn't really do ballads per se, but like I think you know what I mean when I say like a Priest style ballad. This is kind of their typical thing. It's not bad. It's a little repetitive. I like though when Rob harmonizes with himself in his higher pitch and his natural register. That is a really cool aspect of the song that really, I think it makes it one of those points that draws you in. It has some really nice moments. It does get much better in the second half with the like more machine gun vocal section, and has some like overdubbing experimentation, which I thought was really cool. Had the opening been maybe a little shorter, because it's like a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes before it really gets into the good part. I would probably think it's a better track, but it's still like a really good one.
Yeah, when you first listen to this, you're like, is this a ballad? Yeah, it's a ballad, or is it? Because when it hits that mark at 3:42, it's almost like it had been boiling and percolating for the first 3 minutes of the song.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the song just kicks into high gear, and it has some of the best drum work on the album is in this song. This is really where Bobby shows off his drumming skills, and. Then at the 5:20 mark, the song returns back to the ballad pace. So there's that breakdown is so cool. The words, the style that he's singing in. There's a lot to that in that short 2 minute or minute and a half period of time, but it definitely leaves its mark. But the beginning and the end of the song is still ballad like and very different.
Yeah, but the end of the song ties in so well because it references the beginning, but also it's just long enough. It's fine. Like I like that length there, and so the second half feels very complete, whereas the first half feels maybe a little too long.
Okay, I can see that.
All right, so the next track though is The One You Love to Hate. And that is a killer one. It's banger. It's so good. It's a combo of Rob Halford with Bruce Dickinson. Like, what more could you ask for?
Tell me about it.
The back and forth between the vocalists is just aggressive. And when they sing together, I just like want to pump my fist in the air. Like, I love listening to this in the car. Both are using their more rough vocals, and it's just heavy. The riff itself is just awesome. This is all about the vocals. The solo is almost not there, but it doesn't matter because that's not the point of the song. The point of the song is you've got two of the greatest metal vocalists going back and forth, and man, this if you don't hear anything else from this album, as a metal fan, you have an obligation to go find this track.
This song is so awesome. The riff is so killer when it starts off. I love that. I mean, that's just one of those that you open the windows, crank it, and share it with the neighborhood. I love that riff. Bruce does the first half of the first verse, and then Rob does the second half, and then they trade. In the second verse, Rob goes first, and then Bruce goes second. They do the choruses together. Yes, the way they're singing, it's kind of weird. It's almost angry. But to me, I would almost say it's the most natural of the way the both of them sing. Like, we all know how Bruce sings, and he's got that whole operatic style. This is not that. This is him kind of almost Number the Beast era vocals, where he's just kind of laying into you. And
it's a lot like his solo stuff in a way.
Yeah.
It's very strong and forceful.
Yes.
But it's not that operatic style whatsoever.
Right. And then Rob's vocals is very similar. It's not smooth, but you can tell that's just his straight voice. I mean, he is singing and he is pointing at you, and that's, he's not doing it smooth for a reason. I love this song. The solo that you were mentioning, to me, it's not even a solo. It's almost like whoever does the solo, I'm assuming it's going to probably be Patrick, but it's kind of like he hits a note and he grabs the whammy bar and then he kind of they blend in the screeching vocals and the high pitched howls along with the solo, which is again a screaming note, and then it just goes into the chorus again. That's all there is to it.
It's like it barely exists,
Right, exactly.
It's there, but it's not really. It's hard to describe it as a solo, even though it is kind of a solo.
It's just the breakdown part where they're pumping themselves up again. I love this song. I mean, it's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's freaking awesome.
Ass, so the next track is another banger. It's Cyberworld. This is one of the standout tracks on the album. It's pretty pulse pounding and has a really cool riff and chorus. The solos again is just decent, but it leads into this really awesome guitar harmony, and I'm always a big fan of guitar harmonies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this has got a cool riff. I love the riff on this song. This is a very Priest-like verse chorus melody to me. This is again another example of Rob saying, "I'm over here, guys. Check it out. This could have been our song."
In a way, it is. Like, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, this is something that was kind of new in his repertoire too. Like the way that he sings Cyberworld, you didn't really hear that in Priest. There, like the rest of the track, it is. But this was something that he actually brought back to the table when he went back to Priest. And then he did it also in his preceding solo albums after this. But it was like Rob brought some new tricks along with him too over his experience. And this is one of those that I feel like he influenced Priest more than what they did before influencing him.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's definitely a notable thing.
All right, so track 8 is where the album slows down for me.
I had the same thought.
With the track "Slow Down," and that is a pun, but it also is very true. Rob does showcase his cleaner vocals, which I always like. It does sound really nice. Like I mentioned that, in Fight, he did the same thing where he showed, like, kind of like doesn't show those aspects of his voice where he's augmenting it or modifying it in any way. He does have that here, which is nice. It's not as good as it was on Fight, but it just kind of drags on for me. Like, it's not bad, but by about the midpoint of the song, I'm ready to move on. Speed it up.
This song feels like a leftover song from the Painkiller sessions. There's a hint.
Dude, this would have never made it onto Painkiller because there's nothing this slow on Painkiller.
Exactly.
Painkiller is a cohesive, amazing album. This, if if this was from the Painkiller section or sessions, they should have burned it.
Well, that's why I didn't make it.
Yeah,
there's a like we were talking about, a whiff of a touch of evil on this song.
Yeah, but Touch of Evil's so good. This is
yes, it is. That's why I'm saying. That's why this song didn't make it. This why it was what Painkiller came out in 1990. Okay, and this is 2000. Right, so this is 10 years later. Like, no, there's a reason why. It's not that good of a song. But to me, that's what I caught, that there was like a little tinge of it. It's got a decent riff to it. The chorus is a little different. It's a little bit of catchiness with the slow down part.
It's just too long. Like, it just keeps going, and it's really not even that long of a song. It just feels like it.
What's funny about this is from this point on, the album takes a left turn for me. And we'll talk about all the other songs as we go down. Because don't get me wrong, here's a funny thing. We're not even talking about the 2006 reissue, because I
wish we were.
It's got a couple of good songs on there. I know Sad Wings is one of your favorite songs.
Sad Wings kicks ass, man. But it's so good.
The rest of it's like 2 albums at this point.
Yeah.
So go on. Let's talk about Twist.
So I do like Twist, though. Twist is another slower track, but I do like it a lot more than Slow Down. And it's got this cool dissonant riff, and the chorus is really interesting. Like, the way, like, if you think about the vocal, like the lyric of Twist, and you think about like what it means in the context of the song, it's not like twist like a song or something. It's like twisting a knife, Mm-hmm. And so, like, it is like a song that the first time you listen to, you probably won't like it as much as if you just kind of like listen to the lyrics and go along with it. It's not one of the best tracks on the album, but I actually do like this one. This
song, okay, we're talking about leftovers. To me, this feels like a leftover riff, not the song, but a riff.
Yeah.
From the War of Words sessions.
Yeah, but that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. But it to me, it's just I have this riff here that I had left over. We'll use it for this song. But oddly enough, that's not the case, because this is a Bob Halligan Jr. song.
Yeah, it couldn't possibly be.
Right. This is the guy who wrote Some Heads Are Gonna Roll is the same guy who wrote this song.
Okay, interesting.
This song to me is B-side at best. All right, it shouldn't be on the album. This should be like the B-side to a single that no one has heard of, and leave it at that.
That's funny. I mean, like I said, I decently like it. I don't think it's a standout by any means, but I guess the more I listened to the lyrics, I started to get into it more. And sometimes it's just like that with music,
Yeah, no, of course. Sometimes if you read the lyrics of a song, you can. The song could be shit. And you're like, but that's got great lyrics, and you love that song.
It's true.
So this song has a sound and feel that's different than anything on the rest of the album, and that's, I think, something that happens with the rest of these songs. It almost seems like when right after Slow Down, it's like they finished the sessions, and they went on tour.
They're like, we need more songs.
Exactly. Yeah. So we need more songs. Oh shit. Now we got to show up someplace over here and put together an album, and it just sounds completely different. But there's more songs still. So let's go. Let's talk about them.
All right. So Temptation. The pace isn't going to pick up, is it?
No, it's not.
So this does remind me of some of the stuff, again, that would appear later on Judas Priest vocally. He did some of this kind of style in, what was the album? Angel of Retribution, where he was like, what was it, Epitaph? Is that or Eulogy? Eulogy. It's got some aspects of that, so there's something like Judas Priest obviously had their kind of bluesy era, and then they got really heavier as time went on. By the time he left Judas Priest after Painkiller, they were at their heaviest. And then, he obviously did a few different things, and they got, back into doing a little bit slower stuff after Angel of Retribution. But you saw hints of kind of where they would go with different stuffs, later on after that album. This is kind of, I feel like this track and some of the stuff on this album is the catalyst for that more, I want to say like Rob would hold notes out longer is maybe the best way to put it. It's like he really got into kind of showcasing the vibrato a bit more, and that's what he does here on this song. The solo again is all right. I do feel like again that's really just kind of the theme of the album is all right solos with good riffs. But yeah, it's I can pass it. I'd rather have another song like Sad Wings on it for sure. Like
it makes no sense why Sad Wings was left off this album.
Yeah.
Anyway, Temptation.
Maybe it was a legal thing. Who knows?
I mean, you never know because for those who don't know, when you listen to the song Sad Wings, he says the full name of their second album, Sad Wings of Destiny.
Sad Wings of Destiny.
So, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, is this like a leftover song from 1974?
Not at all.
So, definitely not. Temptation, it's a nice riff. It's a song about a bad relationship. There's not a lot more to say about it.
I would say I have a temptation to push the skip button.
All right, well, we skipped to song number 11.
So track number 11 is Drive. So it starts off kind of heavy, but like hits me with a total, left turn because the vocals come in and it's like kind of bluesy and almost like he's doing like a cheerleader cheer.
It's almost like an old rock and roll song from the 50s.
Yeah, right? It's so different. So coming off of this kind of like heavy intro, it's like what? Like it just smacks you across the face like what?
This
like you fell asleep in class, like yeah, I don't care for this track. It's all right.
This is where what we're talking about for everyone that's listening out there. From Twist on, and even from Slow Down on, for the most part, the album just kind of just goes into a different direction. And like we're saying, these songs are like leftovers. That's the way it feels to me. They're definitely different production. I mean, this song definitely does not sound like it had anything to do with the first part of the album. It's got a cool riff, but the production is different. The sound is different. The songwriting style for this song is different. So it tells you a lot about it. I mean, it was written by Rob, Roy Z, and Bob Martlett, which is a guy from the record company. So I don't see why it's so different, other than they purposely did it that way. It just the song itself is just not that good. It's weird. It like you said, it sounds like an old style song. Production is funky. I don't know. I don't like it either.
It's just one I can live without. However, the next track does tie things up kind of nicely. Savior is, like the pace picks up again. It took a while. And, it ties back into the sound of the first few tracks. It's not as good or as impactful, but it makes sense. So it's a nice fatality. Wow. It's a nice finale. And it has like one of the better guitar solos on the album, to be honest. Like it really does. It's better than decent, I would say. And then it does feature another really nice harmony section. If this followed, like if you cut out, say, Slow Down, Temptation, Drive, this would be a solid, 10 song album. And it would sound a lot better. Like sometimes too much is too much. Like cut out 3 of the tracks on a 12-track album, and it's not like you're not putting out enough content, and it's probably going to sound a lot better.
I agree with you. That's a rant for another day.
Yeah.
I that was something I wanted to talk about too, was just these albums that are unnecessarily long, for the fact that just because you have 80 minutes to play with on a CD doesn't mean you have to give us 80 minutes of music.
Like, imagine if Metallica had taken just the best tracks and put it on this new Hardwired. Hardwired is great, but there are some tracks that way outclass others. And you think about it, and if they had cut it down to one CD, it would probably be an instant classic. It's a great album, but it could be a classic. And so that's the way I think about it. Like, think about Slayer with some of their short run times. Those albums are like near perfect, though.
Yeah, but Slayer was punky, so that's why the songs were short.
But that's I'm not even talking about the length of the song. I'm talking about the length of the album.
Oh yeah, they never did anything more than 10 songs.
Yeah, they didn't have to. Like, don't do 15 freaking songs on an album.
No, and the funny thing about the Metallica Hardwired is only 12 songs.
Yeah, but it goes on for 17 hours.
I think if they would have done like, if you think about Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning, were only 8-song albums, and they were 45, 50 minutes long. So
they're near perfect.
I think if you take the first side of Hardwired, which is the first 6 songs, and then take 3 of the songs from the other one, you would probably have a good 9-song album, and that's all you needed.
And I'm not trying to like just criticize them specifically or anything, but I'm just that was just an example that came to mind where it's like sometimes you just don't need more, and I think this album in particular, Resurrection, does showcase that. Where I think we've talked about it a few times when we've done these album comparisons, where sometimes it's just cut a couple songs and this album would be so much better.
So here's the funny thing, like Iron Maiden's the opposite. They only have 10 songs on this new album, but they freaking last forever.
That's true.
Like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should just make it a 5-song album because it's already going to be an hour long.
It's funny.
All right. Savior, to me, it's got a cool riff. It's got a nice melody in the chorus. But you've gotten to this point. Yes, the song itself sounds like it belongs with the rest of the album.
It's cohesive, yeah.
So it does make it cohesive. So it is a way to finish off the album. And it definitely needed finishing off by this point. It was just like, come on, we're way too deep into this album.
But the songs at the beginning are just so good that you, like, I have to say, like, I've always felt like I liked this album way more than I did when I analyzed it, because there are such really good tracks on it. But it was almost like a feeling like I had like with Bark at the Moon versus Ultimate Sin, where I had convinced myself that I liked Bark at the Moon more because I listened to some of those tracks more often. But as a whole, like as the album, it's deceiving.
Yes.
So I think you get where I'm going with this, where I would say honestly that I would pick Fights, War of Words over Halford Resurrection.
Right, and I agree with you. For me, as I mentioned, at the beginning, War of Words is one of my all-time favorite albums, just in general. There are some lulls in the album, so it's not a perfect album for me, but it's pretty up there. It does. Yeah,
obviously, there like I mentioned, like there's a few tracks that I didn't like all that much on War of Words, but I think as a whole, it's more cohesive. There's more experimentation, and there's an attitude there that's like you feel how Rob is feeling.
Right. So side one, if you want to look at it that way, of Resurrection is awesome. I love those first bunch of songs. And then you throw in The One You Love to Hate and Cyberworld, and you've got yourself a good collection of songs. It's just the level of song just dropped dramatically.
Yeah,
after that.
Like I said, even if say you didn't have all those fillers and Savior ended the album, you might feel differently about it because it does feel cohesive with the rest of the album.
Correct.
I mean, it's not going to be a top tier song, but I think it's stronger if it, in the context of fitting in with those other tracks.
Absolutely. All right, so we've laid out our opinion. Both of us agree that to us, War of Words is the better album. For those of you who are interested out there, War of Words was released a couple of years ago on vinyl for Record Store Day, so you may still be able to find a copy out there for you for those people who are into vinyl. But the CD itself is still available. It's a really good CD. Pick it up if you get the chance. Resurrection is still available out there. Actually, hold on. Resurrection got pulled off the market, so I don't know if Rob re-released everything because he had it on that Metal God Records or Metal Is Records or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he released it himself, and then he pulled it. And he was actually selling it at one point on the Judas Priest, store, on their online store. But I don't think those are currently available to purchase right now. So they might be out there, still, like on the used section or something like that. I could be wrong.
Probably find it at like a half price or probably on... I don't know. You might be able to find it used on Amazon or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it might still be out there now. But if you have a chance to get it because it is still a very good album for the first half of it. So, I think, and
that's honestly better than a lot of bands. Like, let's just be honest. There's a lot of bands that put out one hit single, and that's all they ever do. So, if you can put out an album that's and a lot of people aren't going to always get through the whole album listening, in one sitting either. So it's a different world than it used to be, and people aren't really listening to albums in the same way either. But as metal fans, I think we are.
Yes, and it is still available on Amazon. So you can still pick it up. And if for anybody interested, they can pick up everything. The complete albums collection from Rob Halford includes Fight, 2, and Halford. All the albums.
Can I get like a non-complete version?
Skipping the 2 part?
Yeah,
that's rough. All right, well, that's that part tonight. So now we get to our big 4. And our big 4 tonight is big 4 Judas Priest albums. We've done Judas Priest songs, we've done Rob Halford songs, but we haven't done Judas Priest albums. So I went first last time. I think it's time you go first this time.
All right. So my number 4, I know it's probably not their best album by any means, but I think for me it meant a lot because it represented the Priest camp returning to form, and that's Angel of Retribution. I like a lot of the tracks on this album. I like every track on the album, to be honest. But specifically, there are a few that I really think stand out above the others. Wheels of Fire, I think, is one of those that just kind of sticks in my head all the time. Demonizer is like a sequel song to Painkiller, and like in context of lyrics. Deal with the Devil, the actual track Angel of Retribution, Judas Rising. I mean, I could go on. Like, the whole album kicks ass. It's not their most exploratory album. Like, they weren't really doing anything new, but that didn't matter because this was a long time coming. Rob Halford coming home, and it's such a good album. I just absolutely love it. My number 3 is going to surprise a lot of people. But you have to think about it. Like, when I was listening to Judas Priest, this was like in my formative years of listening to the band. And also, it may not be a real Judas Priest album in the context of a lot of fans' eyes, but I love Jugulator. I know you have very different opinions on the album than I do, but it's very heavy. It's got a lot of really good tracks, and I think if it was released under any other name than Judas Priest, I think a lot more people would like it. But obviously there's that perception of this is not the Priest that I grew up with, and I totally understand that. But when you grow up in a different time period and this is what comes out, like, for me it wasn't out of the ordinary. So I absolutely love this album. I think, like, there's a few really standout tracks. Cathedral Spires at the very end that it shows the range that Tim Ripper Owens can sing in. Bullet Train, Burn in Hell is probably my favorite track on the album. Jugulator, Bloodstained, that was a hit with a lot of people, even fans that weren't necessarily fans of this era of the band. So I think it's one of those. I've mentioned it before a long time ago when we did our What Should You Be Listening To. I stand by this album. I think it's fucking great. My number 2 is Screaming for Vengeance. I think that's probably a lot of people's number 1 album. Screaming for Vengeance was their first really true metal album. You can say British Steel was, but to be honest, it's not that metal sound that would come later, and at least in my eyes. Like, British Steel was that tipping point that took us to that direction, but Screaming for Vengeance was what, like, really, to me, said metal. Hellion Electric Eye combo, Riding on the Wind. I even like Take These Chains, Pain and Pleasure, Screaming for Vengeance, the track. Oh my God. Wow. It's a near perfect album. You Got Another Thing Coming. I don't like that as much because I think it's a simpler song, but you can't deny, like, the impact that track had on it. And then my number 1, I think we all know what's coming, is Painkiller. Painkiller, to me, is a perfect album. There is not a track on there I don't like. I listen to this from beginning to end every time. From Painkiller to One Shot at Glory, I can't think of a bad track. I can't think of a track I don't love, and I love the story that it's telling throughout it. It's not a concept album per se, but there is this cohesive songwriting that tells about these stories of these metal saviors, giant cataclysms, battles, and it's so epic and so grandiose, and it is the heaviest album they ever released. You can say some of the stuff that they're putting out is heavy now. It is, but it's not the same as Painkiller, and they're never gonna be the same as that at that point either. There's just the factors of everything that was going on at the time, the animosity between the guitar players, the stuff that Rob was going through with his personal life, that metal tipping point of the change in sound and metal. This is a perfect album.
Do you like Painkiller? I really couldn't tell. I like Painkiller a lot too. So my list is a little different than yours. You've got 2 albums the same that cross over.
I know which ones they are. I can.
So, and they're in different places. That's for sure.
It's obviously Jugulator.
Yeah, that's my number 10. No, all right. So my number 4, and this is going to surprise some people out there as well. My number 4 is Firepower, the last Judas Priest album. That album, it grew on me. It was weird. I immediately listened to Firepower. That the song was great. I listened to the first few tracks. I'm like, wow, this is really good stuff. But when you get deeper into the album, you realize there's a lot of there's a lot of depth to that album, and there's a lot of things going on. It's a combination of a lot of different eras of Judas Priest. Not necessarily the early eras, but it's got a combination of the Painkiller era. It's got a combination of the Screaming for Vengeance era. It's got a combination of the Redeemer of Souls. Redeemer of Souls? Is that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The Redeemer of Souls era. So it's got all that combined into it, and it's just a lot of melody on the album, a lot of choruses, some really good playing, performance wise. Between Richie and Glenn and Scott doing some, and of course Ian just holds down the backbeat so well. I mean, it's a really good album for me. Number 3 is Painkiller. I really enjoy that album a lot. I don't enjoy it as much as you do, but that's neither here nor there. I think it's a great album. Painkiller to me is just a fucking amazing song. And it just kind of just rips your face off when you hear it. Every time you hear that drum intro, you just kind of you're waiting for that guitar to screech in, and then all of a sudden, Rob just comes in your face and just rips it off. So it's
oh no.
I gotta change that. Oh my god.
Rob just comes in your face.
Oh, bad choice of words. Oh my god. Holy shit. There's nothing I can say that will fix that. Because it's I was going to say when Rob comes in, he blows your face off. It's the same fucking thing. I'll leave it in.
It's so funny.
Oh, man. So anyway, Painkiller is a really good album, and I like it. It's my number 3. We got to get through this.
Yeah, let's finish up.
Okay. Number 2 for me is Defenders of the Faith. Coming off of Screaming for Vengeance, it was a pretty good. I mean, that was just the anticipation, the build up, the excitement that there was a new Judas Priest album coming. Essentially 2 years after.
It was so good too. It didn't, because you had British Steel, and then they did Point of Entry.
Point of Entry, yeah.
And Point of Entry just really stepped back in a way, and it's got some good tracks on it. Heading Out to the Highway is really good, but it was a step back. But this was the right step, following Screaming for Vengeance.
Yes. So yeah, Defenders of Faith. I mean, with Free Will Burning. I mean, that was
so
probably.
Good.
I mean, next to Screaming for Vengeance, that was the next fastest song that they had put out, and the vocals were just ripping.
And Jawbreaker.
Yeah.
Oh man,
the album is great, front to back. But for me, number 1 is the album that got me into Judas Priest. It was the album that was all over MTV. Screaming for Vengeance, by far, to me, is my number 1 Judas Priest album. Absolutely hands down. And a lot of it has to do with nostalgia for me. A lot of it has to do with, the fact that it was the first thing that I heard from Judas Priest and got into. I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard Living After Midnight on the radio at some point, or Breaking the Law. But to really, I turn on MTV and there's the video for You Got Another Thing Coming playing again and again and again and again and again. I mean, they played the crap out of that song.
It was huge.
Yeah. And so I went out there and all of a sudden, I slap in, you slap on the vinyl and you hear, the Helion Electric Eye and you're like, yo, this is good. This is good shit. So yeah, so that was
Riding on the Wind, man. That to me, Riding on the Wind is just one of those tracks that it just, it amazes me that Rob can sing that way, the whole song.
Oh, I know. I mean, Rob's just an amazing vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my number one album. So, well, folks, that's our big 4 Judas Priest albums, and that brings us to the end of our episode tonight. So as a reminder, you can find this and all of our previous episodes on your favorite podcast platforms, so please don't forget to click the subscribe button.
That's right. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, be sure to send us a message on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, or send us an email to debatingmetal@gmail.com. If you use Spotify, be sure to check out our playlist from our greatest hits episode. And remember to tune in to the next episode where we spark up another exciting metal debate. On behalf of Kenneth and myself, stay safe, and remember, always turn it up to 11.
See ya.